Calling to order the regular scheduled monthly meeting of the Clark County Election Board. Today's November the 18th. Time's a little bit after 4:45 in the afternoon. Myself, Andrew Steele, Tony Singleton, and Ryan Lynch present for the board with Joanne Gohagen, our recorder, Chrissy Henson, a voter registration office, various members of the public. We did take your all's names. If you all want to announce yourselves or just keep on rolling.
Just keep on rolling.
All right. Today was our regularly scheduled meeting. When we met back in October, we had talked about the complaint that was filed back over the summer regarding the campaign finance. So I wanted an opportunity to keep that on the schedule, but after our election, the couple of things that I wanted to address as part of the business of the election was we had a monumentous day of trying to count those ballots last two Tuesdays ago. And we had published up on the webpage a statement just kind of explaining why it took so long to get those results. I wanted to at least offer the public some opportunity for comments. We've kind of analyzed what we did incorrectly and correctly on election night, dealing with the absentee and the central count. And we are going to be working, 2025 is an off-year election, so we've got the entire year to kind of plan for dealing for 2026 and 2028. Making sure that we have some better processes in place and knowing how to call on more help. Basically, we were swamped, and the 22,000 ballots that we were going through was probably a little bit more than our absentee board could handle. And looking back on it, we did have the ability to call for more backup from the parties, but I know from my perspective, and I'm not going to speak for Tony, but I have a feeling it's the same. We ran into the fire to try to put it out rather than sat there and called for another fire truck, which was probably the mistake that we made where, at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're still trying to process those absentee ballots. If you guys want to, I give everybody a minute or two. I mean, I'm not in a hurry, but if you guys have anything you want to add for us, that you want us to consider going forward, anything, any ideas or anything you want to add, we're always open for comments and suggestions. So I encourage you, even if you don't think of it today, come back, drop it off, and let us know. And I try to read and review everything that comes into us, give it consideration to see what we can do to add to it. And I know Tony and Ryan feel the same way. So with that, has anybody got anything they want to add? Go ahead.
So I think my suggestion.
Go ahead and tell us.
I think my suggestion would be to have a subcommittee and do a debriefing while it's fresh in your mind as to what maybe you all have taken notes or whatever you've done thus far, and have a subcommittee, which I would be happy to volunteer on. But I just have an instantaneous question. How many people were on the absentee board that were running and how many machines? And by Thursday or Friday prior to the election, those numbers were at what?
By the close of business on Monday, when the last round went through, we were at 22,210, I think was the total number of absentee ballots. We had 17 employees and 9 machines. We had in 2024, I believe, 24 employees, and we had more machines. And the possibility of renting more machines is there for the future if we have that volume. I think when we were planning, we didn't expect that the slowdown occurred where teams have to open the ballots in bipartisan groups. And with 17 employees. That was 5 3-man teams. It was originally supposed to be 6 3-man teams. We had a person out due to illness. The plan was that we were going to be able to handle it. And then where the slowdown occurred was literally the physical opening and separating of the ballots. So we had plenty of machines if we could have just kept feeding them ballots, but we didn't have enough people to literally open the envelopes and separate the ballots from the envelopes. Going forward, that's obviously something that we've got to analyze. And a study committee might not be a bad idea. Part of the difficulty with counting ballots, people expect their results early. I don't know if it's exactly feasible with the popularity of absentee balloting going forward. We had a record this year like we did in 2024. And it's evident that more and more people are taking advantage of walk-in and mail-in balloting. I think one of the things we're going to focus on is making sure that we're beefed up here as much as possible to deal with mail-in and absentee balloting.
So the week prior to Tuesday, that week, you must have had a tremendous amount of ballots also.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the last day, Monday we voted 700 people. Saturday they voted about 2,000 people at the two locations. So we had about 20,000 by Thursday or Friday.
And I know you all, I'm not sure about you, Tony, but I'm sure. But I know you for a fact know what it takes to open up the ballots.
Yeah, at my best speed, I can feed 15 ballots into a machine in a minute.
But the opening of, I was told there were different size envelopes.
Yeah, we had 3 different styles of envelopes. It was a mess.
Yeah, so again, it is a math number, at least the week before.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got X amount of ballots. It takes X amount of time to open them, flatten them, then of course feed them through the machine. So I don't know who did the math the week prior, but I think there was room for improvement on that.
And we would all agree.
We agree with you.
Okay, so I think that, and then let me ask you another question.
Kelly, and let me get to that point.
Uh-huh.
So assuming not even the opening of envelopes, we had 9 machines. If we had 9 machines and 9 people, Andy said he could feed 14 ballots through in a minute if it went in perfect, right?
Right.
So there's no kickbacks. This is lawyer math, so somebody needs to verify it.
CPA.
But the bottom line is to get things done by within the 12 hours, to be done by 6 p.m. If you took his number and said, all right, things are going to happen, things are going to get kicked back, you could do 10 in a minute, which sounds a little bit more reasonable. So you have 720 minutes, 10 ballots a minute. By my math, we needed about 30 machines and 30 teams to be able to do it. So
right.
It is a math problem, and it's a math problem that we're not going to be able to solve in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to we can't find enough poll workers as it is. So we've got a couple of ideas. I mean, I've kicked around some ideas that I shared with staff, and they have thrown it right now. Just tell me if this idea would work. And I think getting a committee together wouldn't be a bad idea.
I think it needs to be. I mean, I kind of half expected a phone call. Hey, come help. I think every one of us here would have been willing to help. I thought we had expressed it, and so.
Well, as Andy said, and I agree 100%. He and I about 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon saw we had a problem, solved the numbers issue, and again we ran into the fire with a bucket.
Yeah,
and so it was just total tunnel vision. We're going to get it done, and for that, I mean, and I think
you
our
have
statement.
our apologies.
wait a minute. I got just. I'm sorry, John. While I'm thinking of it. So, as far as renting other machines, were other machines available to rent? I mean, do you know if there is?
As
That
the
we
board-
haven't passed, apparently.
Yeah.
And I was unaware of that.
I didn't know. And, going back, we're going to look and see. It didn't, the plan was we thought we had enough machines.
I think everybody knew it was a record-breaking year going to be.
It was going to be high, but if we're going to request those machines Thursday before, I don't know if we could have gotten them from the SNS.
And that's what I wanted to know, also
And-
the lead time.
Exactly. So if early voting starts, 2 weeks prior, and we open up, at that point we had only we had about 3,000 mail ballots. That's no way to determine what our absentee turnout's going to be. And then the sheer volume of people that showed up here and to vote at Tri-Township, we're already within 2 weeks. So it's what we're going to be checking on with the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to do a rental, we have to be able to get approval from the commissioners to
Right.
spend the money for it.
So that's all part of a subcommittee would come
Well,
and ask those questions, get it outlined, and not necessarily
you're the
three.
subcommittee right now because we're deliberating on it.
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
So go ahead and form one of people who are interested, like us or others. I'm sure there are others, and flesh this stuff out. One of you all would have to be the head of it, on these subcommittees according to statute from what I've seen. But I think that would be something, 25 be, off year, so it's not going to really hit us for a while. But we have to have just like the emergency plan, we have to have that in place.
Mhm.
We need to have this in place.
Well,
I was
and the good
pretty
news-
disappointed. I have to say, I was pretty disappointed, and I really was expecting a phone call. I made myself available. I thought, well, they must have enough people, and then I heard otherwise. I heard at least one person was sworn in to help,
We did have people that were on site that we swore
Yeah.
in to have help us.
and I thought,
Again, that's my main regret, and the reason why I'm apologizing is it just, when you're faced with it at the time, it did not occur.
and then was
And
there
you get-
also? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
go
don't
ahead.
mean to cut you off, but we don't want to be here all night, and I do have something else I want to say pretty quickly. So sorry, before I forget. So in rerunning those thumb drives, okay, was that the same occurrence as in 22? I mean, I when I heard that the thumb drives,
Yeah,
yeah, I thought of public rerunning like we had to do in 22.
No,
If you could explain that.
the public rerunning in 2022 was because that race was so close. And the challenge was going to be, did they want to recount? That was the Hawkins-Fleming race. And we agreed to do it. A recanvass of all the ballots. That's where the 1,400 sealed ballots were. What happened on Tuesday was we fed the initial report through, all the sticks read, everything was fine. That was at about 7 o'clock in the morning. When we ran that summary report, I looked at it and I said, we didn't include the total number of registered voters. Can we just rerun these again? Well, we reran them again. I'm looking at the total registered number of voters, not the total number of votes. 3 of those sticks did not read the second time. And so they didn't get added into that ballot total, which is what we signed off on. When we saw that, looking at the first report and the second report, we realized, where did these 4,000 ballots go? Not ballots, just totals. That's where we realized, oh, the machine didn't read it. We isolated it. We have 3 locations where there's 2 machines to count the total number of ballots. Jeff High, River Valley, and what's that?
So River Valley, Renaissance, and 4-H.
And 4-H. So because of the volume there, we have 2 machines. It was the second stick from each of those locations that apparently didn't read, or the first stick, whichever one. So when those didn't go through or they didn't get added, obviously we were in touch with the SNS. They couldn't explain it. Their advice was rerun this again. And we did, and everything came out.
So that's a third run you're speaking
Yes,
of.
the third recanvass of the sticks.
And so the third run matched the run that we did originally
Without the registered vote.
without
Right.
input, without that data having been inputted.
And, we could have just left the registered voters off, but I didn't, I wanted it to be on there just so that people had an idea when they're looking at the total number, the percentages of turnout. and that's the reason for running it a second time. ES&S basically had no other explanation as to why those sticks did not run completely. I don't know if it's mechanical. When you go to plug them in, they just didn't pick it up. So I wasn't exactly pleased about it, finding out later that, oh, we've got to do this a third time. But I can assure you that the first run, we had everything, and they matched the third run with the total number of registered voters. So, yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I asked this back in 22, but I need to know. When you're running a thumb drive into the election management system, and that thumb drive has completed its download, is there something that pops up and says,
yes,
download
it says it's
completed?
ready. Yeah, and
so
it
you
won't
had
let
that
you-
on those three that
right.
did not register the second run.
Well, maybe, I mean, at that point, bear in mind, to that point, we'd all been up at least 26 hours.
Yeah.
Something popped up there. I can't swear
we
to what it
couldn't-
said. I couldn't read by that point in the morning.
Right. You
Well,
can't
see, and
go to-
that's what I had talked
Yeah.
to Andrew about previously, is proxying in people in your all's position that are well trained, so that when you encounter lengthy evenings, you can have a backup step in
yeah.
at whatever X amount of time and with fresh eyes, and then make sure. I approached this because of what happened and what was been said in the past. And that's another thing that concerns me, is you've got to utilize people, that are willing to help, like us, And I hear what you're saying. And I know that Angela and others, had long nights prior to that.
Right.
But there are people willing to help, but you all have to do a better job reaching out to them.
Yeah, and again, that's exactly what we're apologizing for.
Prior to.
Yeah.
Not day up, because there can be something go AWire as it does.
We know that things go haywire. But yeah.
Anyway, that's all I have.
You're right. The third total that we did sign off on was the accurate count. We ran the provisionals on Friday.
How many were there?
40 total. We accepted 18. There were 7 federal only ballots that were also accepted, so the total difference was 25 ballots. And those were added to the totals. Obviously, they didn't shift any of the races. It just increased the total, and those are going to be in the final report. Those are the Group 3 additions.
What's the day that you certified?
Today was the day that we sent the certification.
This was today.
We've asked for an extension for write-in ballots because we still have to collate those. Several of them, people are going to vote for Mickey Mouse. So the only write-in ballots that are going to count are the ones that were officially recognized by the Indiana Election Commission. So there were 200 write-in ballots for president, but only 20 for state senate, for Senate, 20 for governor. And even then, if there was a valid write-in candidate, those won't change once we add those to the certification count. Those are not going to change any of the races. And again, I would suspect of the people that voted write-in ballots, who knows what they wrote in. But, we had 4 candidates on the ballot for president, and whoever the officially recognized write-ins were, those are the only ones that are going to receive ballots or totals counts. Yeah. So that's still to come. Hopefully we'll be able to have those done within the next week or so, because the DS takes a snapshot so we can identify the ones that had the write-in ballots, and then we can print those or tabulate them to match who needs to receive their proper ballots or their proper votes. So
I got one more question.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Sorry, you gotta jump in there. So on your ballot, your paper and all that, did you have sufficient amount of the ballots? I mean, you had printed off enough ballots.
Yeah.
You didn't have any issues.
I mean, we didn't have any.
Did
We didn't have to print off any and take
Yeah,
it.
we didn't have any shorts or
you
anything
didn't have
like
any
that.
shorts, DS 800 or whatever that printed on demand machine ran.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, we had. I think the only place where the turnout was going to get close was either Bethlehem or.
Once she figured out how many was in the package, she knew she was fine.
Yeah, she knew she was fine. She
They don't have any with an inch package.
Yeah, she originally contacted us with a freak out that she didn't have enough.
And just address
But
the
she was
envelopes
fine.
again real quick. What was your process on getting other envelopes when you didn't have enough?
Order them as needed.
Order
And-
them from a local vendor then?
Yeah. Well, they're all coming from a local printer.
I didn't know.
And the first set are manila envelopes, letter size, that open on the sides. The second set was manila envelopes that open long ways along the top.
The
And then-
vendor didn't have a surplus of,
No, they were out of the
Yeah, I mean,
original stock.
Yeah,
Manila envelopes.
the National Envelope Repository was out of envelopes. So we were ordering what we could get to print. And then the last one was the white ones. And those were the ones that I found to be the most problematic. They were a thinner cardstock, white paper, and they opened along the top. But when people mail in their ballots, oftentimes you never know how they're sealing their envelopes. Some people would put crazy glue or Oohoo glue on them, and at least on one of them, I counted one precinct 2 times because I was getting an odd number, a different number in envelopes versus ballots. And it was another person that went through and counted those envelopes and found one of those lousy white envelopes, which we had opened and separated, was stuck up against the back of another manila envelope. And they were all just a little bit different size, so that if you were counting, I usually count in tens because there's only one number with 2 syllables, so I don't have to think twice about getting to 10. And I'd go 1 through 10, 1 through 10, 1 through 10, and I'd divide them out, and I was still missing it, and it was stuck up underneath the bottom. And so the machine, I realized at that point, if it was off by 1, you multiply that by the number of precincts, that could be a big differential. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I've counted this. Where did this go? There's 557 ballots. There's only 556 envelopes. Oh, right, stuck up to the bottom of the other one. So the machine counted. The machine was telling me we had the right number of ballots, but it was freaking me out. And you know, that was at 2 o'clock, and so I did it all over again. Union 1, I ran the entire absentee report and asked Angela to print it just so that I knew what was in that box was the entire report, ran all of those names. There was a Union 2 stuck down in Union 1. Our ABS board, we hope, and this is what we discovered on Tuesday, as they're going through and collating, you hope that they're able to alphabetize the names and that they're all in there and they're counted out. With the volume they were dealing with, it was apparent that the last, I would say 3 or 4 days of early voting, they weren't able to keep up with it. And so their hope was Tuesday morning, they would just be able to sort and start opening. They were not able to start that on time. And that's where
many hands make light work.
I totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And teamwork makes the dream work. And when we got there and realized that they were still trying to collate some of those totals, obviously Tony and I didn't know that, or I would have been working differently. I don't think Ryan realized that was happening either. And you know, I'm not disappointed. I know that our ABS board worked their butts off, but it was a big task, and I don't know if they were up to the challenge. We needed more people. I think, you know, typically the best way to do it is you got to keep throwing bodies at it until it gets done. And our failure, the first failure, was not calling for backup immediately. At 2 o'clock, we could have probably had at least 5 more teams brought in. And we've taken our licks from the party chairman also that wanted the same. And it was like, you could have called us. And it was dumbheaded. I mean, again, I'm running into a fire with a bucket, and I should have stopped and used executive function and said, we just need to call for more people right now. Didn't do it. And then, of course, as the day gets longer, it gets later, you get into a bunker mentality, or nobody's going to show if we call. You know, we're just going to be, we just got to power through it. And that's not always the best. For your sanity, that's not the best idea.
I got a goofy question.
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
smart as some of these people here. What was so imperative that the votes had to be counted so quickly and it such a short amount of time. You said you didn't certify it till today. Why was this time crunch? You gotta get it all done and get it done immediately.
I don't
Is this a
necessarily disagree with
perception from
you.
the public, and they want it,
Yes.
being pushed to do it, or
Yes.
is it the law or what?
There's no, we know that these are counted electronically. So being able to run those sticks on an average election year shouldn't take us more than an hour after the close of polls. And, Borden and Bethlehem are our two farthest points. So those have to drive to us. And then once we collect them, we should be able to feed them through within a matter of minutes. The ballots, everything comes in, we secure it. So the hope is, no later than 8 o'clock are you able to get at least the unofficial results for the election. And we've typically been able to do that. 24 was an outlier year and 2020 was an outlier year. We were better prepared in 2020. We'll be better prepared in the future. My expectation was that we were going to run 2024 the way we did in 2020. And it just didn't come out that way. Candidates in particular are the ones that are complaining to us when they don't get their results fast enough. And they're free to complain. I'm not really here for them. I'm really here for the voters to make sure that they get accurate results. And that's why I want to get it done quick enough. I think the longer it goes, you get goofy suggestions that they're up to no good down there. And of course, you guys have been here on count night. That door's open the whole time. We were open to the public. If anybody had walked in, I probably would have sworn him in as a ballot counter. Because we did have a couple of walk-ins. Hey, can we check? And I was like, what are you doing? Can you open some envelopes for us? So we did draft a couple of people. Wish that we'd have made a phone call. But go ahead, Kelly. But to speak to your question, state certification is after state certification. The final official results are after the election. Everybody that voted a provisional on election day has the ability to come back. They have to show us identification or something to cure the reason why they were not able to cast a normal ballot at the polling location. That deadline was 12 o'clock on Friday. We processed at noon after nothing else was received. So we had to add those. So the final count isn't the final count until the state gets it. Everything in between there, we could run those sticks 20 times. We could recanvass as many times as we want. There really isn't any limit to how many times we ran those. The data obviously hasn't changed. As long as they're reading correctly, it's the same. But trying to get them back to the public as quickly as possible. I mean, after this election season, I think most people are ready to exhale and go back home and not think about having this on the television or the news all the time. I don't think that there's anybody in any party that loves political campaigns so much that they wish it was every day of their life on the national news. Well, you might be two people in this room.
No, I have a question. That's always so I just, if you don't mind, addressing why we did switch from running the absentee earlies out to the precincts to run.
That's state law. And
Is that state law? They changed it to where
yes,
you have to
absolutely.
have a central count?
Yep.
And
I mean,
truthfully, it's a better system to do central count as long as we're staffed and we have enough
it just
machines.
doesn't seem that way. I
Well,
mean,
it's an issue of ballot security.
Yes.
Every time you take something out, I mean, it's bad enough with the concept of central count, carrying bundles from one room to another. Even if people are being, even if there's no bad intent, right? Accidents happen, things go missing. Leaving this building to go all over the county with a stack of ballots.
In
I thought that was.
2018,
I
we
didn't
had
realize
ballot
there had been a state statute.
In
Change.
2018, we had ballot runners that were in a small fender bender. And that has to be a Democrat and a Republican, two-person teams. And they were running to Clarksville. And the accident was at Stanson Fur and Brown Station Way, I recall. And it was just a small, but they couldn't drive the rest of the way. So we had to find two more people, another team to go pick them up.
Yes.
For ballot security purposes, I think that that's completely reasonable not to be running those out to the precincts.
That
It's
was
also
the question
dangerous.
that was brought up.
Yeah, for our coworkers to be doing it. I don't want them to be in a situation where if they don't have to drive, they don't need to drive.
And who is your travel board? I mean, what do they, are they a totally separate?
We were the travel board this year.
You two were this
Yeah,
year?
we collected one on election day. We went out. We had an in-person vote here that did not turn in a ballot or an envelope, and we went and tracked her down and got that back. So she was issued. Yeah, she didn't get the ballot. She took she checked in and then walked right out the door. And so at that point, we're afraid that we've issued a ballot and we've got a hot ballot and a hot envelope out there, right? So when they do the rectification, they go through. They know everybody that signed in. They know everybody that voted because their names are on the envelopes in the ballot. Well, hers wasn't there. That's the two of us had to drive out to collect that.
So the nursing homes, you all were that also?
No.
Okay.
Angela and Chrissy also did it. We did not have that many travel board requests.
Do what now?
We assigned 2 workers from the absentee
Yeah.
to do that. 2 volunteers.
And our absentee
Okay.
board is also reluctant to drive much anymore. Some of them are older.
Well, new blood,
And
new fresh, you understand.
It's part of what we're
Nursing
reviewing.
homes, we went out before registration was up. Because they have to be registered, a lot of those people at the nursing homes, because they haven't changed their address where they become residents of the nursing homes. So yes, we did that before registration was up October 7th. And as we were there, we done absentee applications so they could vote independently on their own. Tribal board did go out Monday before the
Right.
election.
Yeah, I'm not saying they didn't. I
But
know
there was
that.
only one day I could
Right.
get a Democrat and a Republican from the absentee board to go out because none of them want to be in the same car, none of them want to drive. I mean, the parties get the workers, we don't.
And part of our
But the
discussion
clerk's
going
office
forward in
can
the
get
next
the workers.
part of our discussion going forward in the next year is authorizing Ryan to make the
Yeah,
hires.
I
The only
mean-
thing you've got to disclose to us in the interview process is how you vote,
Right.
because we have to be able to know what your voting history is.
And that can be checked for primaries at
You know,
least.
I've said here, this is year 10, and I've said repeatedly, listing on Indeed is not the worst thing in the world, and the Democratic Party would usually get its people in on time, but we had for several years issues with getting enough workers through the Republican Party, and it was literally nip and tuck up until the last
Well,
minute.
that's why you don't rely on either one. You rely on your clerk and your
And
election board.
I agree with you. I've said that now for 10 years,
Yeah,
and I
well,
think it's
It's time.
it's
Past time.
becoming more and more real
Okay.
as reality has a way of teaching people lessons whether they want to believe it or not.
That's all
And
I
the reality is we've got an aging workforce that are dedicated but physically not capable. And when I said they weren't up to the task, I mean physically not capable of opening the envelopes as
God
fast
bless
as we can.
them, you know.
Yes.
But,
And
you
they're
know,
not going anywhere. I'm adding to the crowd, not taking people away.
I mean,
So
I
I'll be
appreciate
clear
them,
about that. But I don't want to throw anybody into that kind of a situation again in the future where I know they were exhausted and I know they were worn out and I think they felt defeated, but it wasn't their fault. It was our failure to get them enough assistance early enough. And, our statement that we put out with the third count totals, I think pretty much summed it up from the three of us. Sorry, it's an apology. I can't say anything else about it. I wish I thought to do a couple of things different on election day. It would have made it a lot easier, but it didn't, alas.
Can I ask
Here
a quick
found myself.
question?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have to wait till 6 p.m. to start the
Yes,
count?
6 a.m. 6 p.m. polls closed, can't count anything before then. So nothing
So you were
goes
going
into
to count
the...
22,000 votes after 6 p.m.
No.
6 a.m.
6 a.m.
6
the
a.m.
ballots can open, but the count can't start until the polls
We can't
close.
total.
Yeah, we
So
can't.
you had them all open, separated,
fed.
just ready to be
No,
through
fed.
at 6 p.m.
The opening separating started at 6 a.m.
Right.
and we try to get them done before 6 p.m. So you've got a 12-hour window. That's what we couldn't get done. They're still going through a machine. The stick is the data drive that has to be fed to the machine. We were able to run the machines for all of the other precincts, but when you've got 22,000 ballots out, reporting 60% of the results is not going to be sufficient to release to the public with any certainty that none of those races were going to change. There was still 22,000 ballots that we still had to put through the machine. Those are all run on those 9 machines downstairs, and all of those sticks are fed through separately.
Beginning at 6 p.m., you run them through the machine.
No,
Ballots run
When
through the
they're
machines
done.
all day.
Oh, you said
And
you
then
could
you put
open them and separate them beginning at 6,
And
but you
run,
couldn't run them
And
through
run
till
the-
6
can't run
Can't
the,
p.m.
can't run the
But you
data
can
drive.
run them through.
you just can't run the data
You can't
sticks.
run the data sticks through the election management system. You
Right.
can't.
You didn't say
The
it was two
machines can
separate
count the
things.
ballots, Alice, but they can't see what the results of the
I
count
think
are
we should.
until 6.
So,
That's what
so
he's
you're
saying.
opening, you're separating, you're running them through the machines continually, and then at 6 p.m. you can start running the thumb drives. But you wouldn't take the thumb drives out necessarily to start.
No, because you got to close the machine.
Yeah,
You
I
got to
mean-
close the poll. So those 9 machines are open
They're
until the
open
last
until
ballot
you're
goes.
done.
Yes.
Right.
Until you're done.
Right. Yeah. We don't. Yeah.
Yeah,
we
you
can't
don't
count.
remove the, yeah,
Those 9 machines were the ones that we had to wait
Yeah.
until we got everything counted, and then we could run them.
Right.
Yeah, we had all of our precincts. I think the last one came in a little bit before 7 p.m. So we had all of the precinct sticks in. All those ballots had been brought into us, so everything was collected.
yeah, that's.
It was just the central count stuff that was the
Yeah.
slow.
Was
one.
Bubby down there working too
Of
at
course. Yeah.
EMS?
Yes.
Was it he and Nick or?
Him and Nick. We
Okay.
deputized both of them to help us count and sort envelopes.
Prior to this year, what's the maximum number of absentee mail-in early votes that you had?
I think we had 24, 25, somewhere in that range in 2020. So 20, how many?
23 something.
23.
So about the same.
Yeah,
amount.
it was almost the same. I was expecting us to get close. I didn't expect us to hit the COVID number because what drove 2020 was we had the lockdown. I didn't expect 2024 to have that many absentee, but it's clear that people are preferring to vote absentee early or by mail. So
I think it was encouraged to vote early.
I think a lot of people do encourage because nobody wants to show up. And I mean, the starting line at River Valley was out the door around the front parking lot, and I spent the first hour and a half of election day out there getting that reorganized. They were set up kind of tight in the gym, and there was more room to bring people in than what they originally had set up. I don't think they expected physically that many people, but
Well, even here,
Yeah.
sometimes the line was down the
it was
hallway.
snaked all the way through the
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
on Saturday. It was kind of shocking.
And out the front door.
But hey, meet your neighbors. Most people, they're in it for the long haul. They'll stick it out. They chat and learn something new about other people in the county while they're waiting in line to vote.
One other quick question. When you are doing the counts and you say you do it in teams of Republican and Democrat, candidates cannot
Absolutely cannot touch.
touch it. I mean, they can't be part of a team.
No.
Candidates or candidates' family members,
So
There's
that's
a
how
list
we
of
have to screen them.
close
Okay.
family members.
I'm
of
just making
candidates.
sure. Okay.
We have had poll workers and election workers work for us, but that's after the polls have closed, so technically their campaign is done. And we've drafted people in the past to help us with that count.
For instance, that we had a Democrat watcher and a Republican watcher that were watching, and probably about 8 p.m. It's like, guess what? You've been deputized. You're no longer
They
watching.
were just poll watchers, and we needed more help, so we said, pick up a box.
And the teams that go out to nursing homes and other,
Those are
Places.
bipartisan as well.
right, but neither one of those can be a candidate.
No.
Okay. Well, I've
Yeah.
heard rumors, but maybe.
Well, yeah, I want to know about your rumors and who you heard them from, because you met the travel board.
Yeah, well,
Right.
not this year.
They can't go collect ballots because they're only issued from here. And Tony will vouch. I sat there and we had a gentleman that split his party ticket, and he split that ticket. And all I can do is sit there and read him. Do you wish to vote for so and so, so and so, so and so? And he'll tell me the name. And the reason why you have to have a member of the other party there is you can't suggest, do you really want to vote for that person? You can't do that. You got to ask them and fill it in as they say it. So the two of us sat there, and I would hope Tony would trust me with his wallet, but
He's a lawyer. Trusting a lawyer?
I am a prosecuting attorney. That's not a lawyer.
You haven't passed the bar,
I have a
correct?
different ethical obligation.
You haven't passed
Yes,
the
I
bar,
have passed
okay.
a bar.
Well, I just double check.
If there's nothing else,
I have one
go ahead.
question, it's more for Ryan. Ryan, are you aware of any other counties in the state of Indiana having similar difficulties this year?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I don't know. I haven't really had time to reach out to.
I didn't know if you just
Other
heard,
counties.
basically. I assume that there's communication between the counties.
Yeah,
basically.
there are like email strings, but there's like there's 92 people on there. And
No, understood. I
It's
just
hard to-
figured if there was another large difficulty like we had,
I haven't heard of
then
it.
it would have stood out. And I don't know if it was something endemic to our processes, which goes back to what Kelly was saying about how we really should do a debrief and examine the processes and procedures we have to make sure that they are as effective and as efficient as they can possibly be, or if this was something endemic with just the general process that's being handed down maybe by the state, and maybe there are adjustments that need to be made at the state level that would expedite or make the process more efficient at a county level.
I think there are both. I think there's some changes that could be made at the state level, and I don't want to get into them now, but I think there's a few that make a lot of sense that could expedite the process, and I mean that makes more sense, more efficient and effective. But and who's to say what other counties or issues might be out there yet? Admittedly, today was the day that the votes were official.
No, understood, Tony. I didn't hear about any other counties having
Yeah,
difficulties on the
and
same scale. that
I
we
will
did.
say that Floyd County has really never taught me anything. So I just kind of stick with what we do. And again, debriefing like this is important, and I'm glad we're doing it. Unless it's in the media, you're never going to hear about it. But we know that tons of stuff might not get reported. We have to attend, or my position is if the county's paying me, I have to attend. I'm going to go. The annual election conference, there won't be one this year because there's no state races, no elections in 2025. But in 2025, we'll be going for the 2026. And that conference up in Indy is 2 days, and that's usually probably the best opportunity to meet and greet other election board employees, voter registration offices, and typically there'll be at least 1 or 2 seminars that cover best practices for central count, best practices for absentee mailing, all of that stuff. So usually the process starts after election day of trying to put together, getting everything updated and put training material in place or adjusted for the next one. And so I'm looking forward to doing that in 2025. We did it in 23 for this year. And there is something to be learned at every one of them. That's also the place where we meet most of the vendors for our election equipment. And you get to look at about 4 or 5 different voting machines in action, feed your stuff through it and stuff like that.
Is that put on by the state?
Yeah, that's
So that's probably
organized
gonna
by
be
the
live
election.
streamed this next year
I never thought
by
about that.
statute?
I don't know.
Oh, it should.
It might be worth us trying to see what the election commission has on that. That might not be a bad idea. I didn't even really think about that.
I was going to say though,
That's a good question.
if we do have this significant debrief, you can take that information that we bring forward, the conclusions that we have, and you can take it up to state when you go to this meeting and say, hey, this is what we learned. We had this big problem.
Yes,
We learned
absolutely.
this.
Yeah, I'm a conference dork that sits in the front row and usually tries to talk to the administrators when they say, does anybody have any questions? And then everybody in the back goes, look at this guy. What the heck? We just want to get out of here. Right. So, I try to engage with that kind of stuff as much as possible. Our attorneys and our board members, I've got their phone number saved. So, I have emailed and contacted Angela Nussmeier and Matthew Kochever on more than one occasion. I think the most recent, I can't think of her name off the top of my head. I think it begins with a W. Is the attorney.
Valerie Warchel.
Yeah, the Republican appointee. So, but believe me, I don't want to go out and do something that isn't legal. So I'm constantly trying to figure out the best next step before we do something. Excellent. And very good point about the live streaming. I'm going to find out about that. If they don't do it live, I would hope that they probably record them so that they're at least available for viewing after the fact. But
Well, I don't know if it falls under public meetings.
I don't know either.
Like the new statute, requires
Yeah.
everybody to be streaming.
But it is worth an ask. So I'm gonna
Maybe here too.
ask.
Next July, June, live stream, public meetings requirement.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll have to figure out a way to comply. Ask the commissioners for a video camera.
Or they have, the room's gonna be decked out down there, River Ridge, for live streaming, so might have to move it down there.
I don't know about that. I like meeting here.
I know, I understand.
So we'll see if they're supposed to be compliant. It should be at all of the county locations, and I'll find out about that. If nobody wants to add anything, is what I want to do is we'll close this portion for now, but we're going to leave this open. If you all think of anything or have any submissions in writing, we're always available.
I just would like to
Submit.
be included in a subcommittee when the time
And,
comes that
yes,
you all form one.
If we
Myself
do something
personally.
like that, I definitely, I think you guys have proven that you're regulars here. I think you deserve some consideration to be
And we
put
try
on
to
something like
understand
that.
the process.
Yes. And so I don't have any objection to seeing if you guys are available, if we can do something like that. So yes, and I appreciate the volunteer. I mean, it's important. I look back on Tuesday night. I wish we'd have had some different volunteers, but
Who was showing up before we showed up?
Yeah.
No one?
we would have an intermix occasional, but you guys have been our best attendees so far in my 10 years. Congratulations. I do say that. I appreciate your questions. I mean, if we can't answer them, then maybe we're not doing our
We
job.
work
So-
together to try to get
and I appreciate
what's
that.
Can you
needed.
channel that spirit to the local commissioners and the county council, stuff like that, Andrew, so that they're more open toward commentary and dialogue?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I can only do so much.
Oh, I understand.
So with that, we're going to go on. We had the campaign finance complaint that was filed back in July. I promised you guys we were going to do some follow-up, so I have the paperwork here, and is what I want to do for the next meeting is I'm going to send an invitation to Zachary Klutz, who is the attorney for the PAC and the Mike Moore campaign, to see if he is willing to come and meet with us. I still don't know if I'm able to publish this or give this information out to the public. I don't necessarily feel comfortable doing it without talking to him first. After the meeting today, and he gets the invite as part of the invitation, I'm going to ask him, and then we'll make this available for you guys to review. At that meeting in December is what I would like is just another, we're going to open the floor and let you guys ask questions and see if Mr. Klutz answers those sufficiently to your satisfaction. I felt like that was the best way to do the process rather than part of my research in this is that if it's not illegal to donate money to a campaign, it's not illegal for a campaign to accept donations, even if it's over the amount. The limit is on the corporations. And in this paperwork, they returned some money, which you guys brought to their attention, thankfully. But for us to do any kind of civil enforcement, it separates into two branches. There is campaigns and the PACs, which we have direct jurisdiction. I'll use that term, direct jurisdiction over, and we can ask for more, and we can bring them in and have them answer questions, and we can levy fines and do those types of things. Then there is civil enforcement, where we are the complainant against individual donors that might violate that. In this case, I did not I do not believe that any of the individual donors that donated here necessarily did it intentionally to break the law. And for us to open that kind of inquiry, we would start here, and then we'd be filing cases in the circuit court and retaining attorneys to litigate that. We could also assess fines against those folks, but I don't necessarily want anybody to feel like I don't think it's good policy for anybody to cool donations. I want everybody to feel like they're able to express themselves financially and with their voice and campaign work. So when I was looking at it and the advice I had gotten from Indianapolis, I didn't feel it was appropriate for us to call the donors in because I don't think there's any evidence that they did anything illegally.
But the complaint didn't talk about donors. The complaint was about expenditures.
I understand
It
that.
wasn't anything to do with donors.
But they answered us with tons of other information.
Well, we haven't seen that, and I think it's wrong that we're not able to see the response.
I understand, and when I get the clearance, I'm going to give it to you. But I didn't feel safe enough without Mr. Klutz being able to explain it. I could give you all the information, but I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea for us to turn all of that over and disclose who their donors were or who the checks came from, so on and so forth. And I just want to make sure that we're covered when we do it. I don't want to open us up to some kind of liability. As we go through, if I'm able to get that stuff to you, I think you guys do as good a job as anybody else of asking follow-up questions. So if there is more to be explained from the campaigns, I want to make Mr. Klutz available to you and to the board for follow-up if there's anything that needs to be added or if we need more information regarding this, and this. You know, the campaign complaint also dealt with shared addresses on 10th Street. That was one of the other issues that came up. And I recall, yes, the expenditure also. There was another aspect of the complaint about city employees being used on the campaign. They did provide us information about that, but until I'm able to disclose it, I don't necessarily feel comfortable doing it until I get the okay.
What if we have the worst case scenario, Andrew, where Mr. Klutz says he doesn't want to speak with us?
I doubt it.
And just
I know. He's
I'm ex-military. You assume the worst and plan for that contingency. What if he says,
I could proceed
no, I don't want the
I could
information
proceed
out there?
with contempt.
Okay.
But again, that all ends up back in front of a judge in a courtroom with the county attorney representing us, trying to have them show cause why they wouldn't respond. They voluntarily wrote the letter to us back in
I'm
July.
saying he may not want to come here and be grilled by a bunch of plebs, in his opinion. So
I have a feeling, I think he might, based on the letter that he wrote us. And I'm not trying to throw the guy under the bus. Or
we can't read the letter yet, so we have no idea what their response is.
And bear in
I'm
mind,
saying
as
this
a
is what I
lawyer,
want.
as a lawyer, you've got a lawyer in Indianapolis. Giving him the opportunity to bill from Indianapolis here
Yes, try
to have
come
a
here.
meeting and then drive back, he's going to want to come. That's at least 5 hours.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Back at the meeting, I think it was in September,
yes, ma'am.
you told us that you were communicating with this guy in Indianapolis and that you'd sent him an email and requested more information and so forth and so on. And now it's 2 months later and we still are not able to see what his initial response was.
Well, remember in October when we had talked about it, and in September, I wanted to focus more on the election.
Right. So you
None of
have
this
not
stuff-
communicated with him in any way?
No.
None
He has-
whatsoever? There's
no.
been no emails, phone calls, or anything between you
And
and
here's the
him?
thing is we can't do that separately. I mean, we can do research and we can find out from the board, but if we're going to deliberate, that's why I'm going to end up making a motion here that we're going to contact him and the three of us are going to basically send a joint email that says, can you be available? We'd like to invite you. These are the questions that came from the public that we would like follow up on, that type of thing. And then also ask for any clearance
Well,
that
it
we
was-
may need.
It was my understanding that you had already sent him a communication and you were waiting for his response, is what you
I'm sorry.
indicated at the last
Well,
meeting.
no, I think there was the original communication
Right.
of the complaint, which gave us, that elicited the response.
Right.
And then we were going to do some discussion to then do a second,
Right. That's the purpose of today,
Communication.
is discussing
So
how are
you've
we
never called him or emailed him or sent him a letter or had any contact with him in any way?
except for the original.
Right, except for
That
the
he
original.
sent to you?
Yes.
Well,
But you
no,
never responded back?
correct.
Right.
We have not responded back.
Hmm.
But you said
Well,
receipts were produced, you got some receipts
They-
from the other side, like what about this car that was purchased that we don't know what
They're
it's
allowed
for?
to purchase a vehicle. I mean, I did the follow-up with the Indianapolis and the attorneys up there, and there's nothing that prevents a political campaign from owning a vehicle.
So who's it
that was-
registered to?
Some member of the campaign. So, and there's nothing that precludes them from doing that. There's nothing wrong with that. So,
Except we heard it was the mayor's wife who was driving.
Well,
So,
if
Yeah.
she's,
is it registered to the mayor?
I don't know. I will check.
So he didn't answer that question.
Those are the kind of
I don't
questions
recall
you're gonna ask
seeing
if he shows
the
up.
title of the vehicle wasn't produced as part of this response. But,
Well, I would say that needs to be produced. That's kind of our point, is like we can't get these documents from them.
I
And we
agree.
see large movement of money between these PACs and between Moore's campaign. And based on what we've just gone through in this county, this needs to be looked at because there could be other people who
Yes.
were doing similar activities.
Yes, I agree with you. And that's why we're here today. So you're asking for follow-up on vehicle ownership. You're asking for follow-up on expenses. City employees being paid as part of the campaign. That was another question. The shared address with the coordination between the two, the PAC and the campaign.
And is a PO box a valid address?
I would think that it is for purposes of doing business. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm kind of disappointed because at the prior meeting, you said you had it and you had it out here and you wouldn't let us take a copy of it because you said you wanted to contact
Right.
Indianapolis first, or whatever the guy's name is, I can't remember. But contact him and get some questions answered and follow-up questions with him before you allowed us to see it.
Right.
And then you said you would go ahead and do that, but you wanted to wait in October till after the election in order
Right.
to give us the response. And now here we are again in November, and we're basically being told the same thing, that, okay, we can't have a copy of it, you have to follow up, you have to answer questions, which we thought, or at least I thought, you had already done that within the last couple of months. And now we're being told,
Okay.
no, we have to wait again, because you said that your follow-up was answer questions, and then you would let us see it, and then you would decide if we needed further information, then you could ask him to come down. But now you're saying, no,
yeah,
we're just
I'll
gonna wait and
apologize.
ask him to come down.
I don't want you to, I wasn't trying to mislead you. The plan was for today to be this discussion about this.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry for that. Because basically, in the run-up to the election, I wanted to push this back. So our next two meetings, and possibly even the January meeting, we're gonna still be dealing with this. So you've got my promise. I'm not pushing this off. I'm actually keeping this on. This is the business item going forward for probably the next 2 to
Right,
3
but
meetings.
you told us you waited till after the election to the November meeting, and then you would give us a copy of it. And now we're here waiting to get the response, and we're being told we still can't have it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I see what you're saying.
Is that strictly addressed to you? That
It's
response?
addressed to the board.
The board.
Yeah, not the citizens of Clark County or to the complainant. So that's what I'm gonna check on. And if we can email it out to you guys later this week, that was my intention. I'm sorry if it was unclear, or that's my fault. I didn't
think what
intend
they may be getting
to
at is,
misunderstand it.
if we don't know what their response is, how do we know what questions to ask? Cold turkey.
But your questions are still the same ones, and that's what we're going to include to them. So, I
I'm
mean,
saying in response to their answers to the question.
Maybe the answers will be there, but
right.
we don't know unless we, as a group or whoever submit the complaints, see it.
If we submitted those questions, if I'm able to get this information to you, and we submit those questions when he's here the next time, that was the plan. And that if there was going to need to be any further follow-up, he would have an opportunity to do more follow-up with us, get us more information and more documentation at the next meeting.
So I think what it is perhaps we need that response emailed to the individual complainants so
Yeah,
they can take a look at
I
it,
don't disagree with you.
and decide their next move.
Yeah, that's
Even
why I'll
if it
check
has to
with
be
them.
redacted or something, I would think that
Right.
it would be kind of a public document at this time. I'm not sure if the
Donors.
investigation
That's why I
is still
haven't moved
open.
it into our record, because I definitely don't, until I'm certain that we can do that, if we need to redact it. Because again, there's personal names in here, personal donors, even though that's public, they may not want to have it broadcast publicly.
You get to
Difference,
choose.
but still.
You don't get to
We didn't
choose, do
question it, John.
I think that
you? You get to choose.
discretion is always wise. You don't want to create a situation, again, part of researching this with how the campaign finance complaints go. The campaigns in the PAC are a different story, but the individual donors is civil enforcement. And I don't think there was anything in the civil enforcement that led me to believe that there was anything illegal about their donations. They over-donated, the money is getting returned or was returned. I don't feel like it's appropriate to go after individual donors. It'd be like if Kelly overwrote a check for an extra $50 and we're going to drag you in on the carpet to make you answer questions about why you did such
I
a thing.
probably wouldn't have a problem with it.
Well,
I'm transparent as all get out.
and I will say that the campaign returned that money and there's been no other follow-up. So, I mean, I think that those donors probably, I don't necessarily think that it's a wise move to call donors in on the carpet when they want to donate something and there's no real evidence that they did anything illegal.
I don't think we questioned donors, though.
I
You
did.
keep saying that.
I'm
You
the one who made a
questioned-
list of donors because I
Yeah.
wasn't
Yes.
sure about
But
the
the
amounts.
initial complaint was just on expenditure.
There were two complaints. There were the one
Yeah.
that was on expenditures, and then there was the one
Right.
that was on,
Right.
So he's
Don't.
given you two responses?
which they're using it as, he's the same attorney, so it's like,
Yeah, there
He
was,
sent you two different responses?
well, we received 2 responses, but they're not, the responses cover everything that they got
So why did he send a second response?
because he wanted to add more to the first response. So
After-
he included more
Any
information.
of you contacted him and
No,
asked
it was,
questions?
no, it was, we received the first response on Friday and then on Monday he sent in a follow-up email that
supplemental.
said, hey, here's more information.
Well, I just can't
We were
imagine
gonna
why, because you said that you were gonna contact him and get some things clarified or whatever you were gonna do, and then you would see if we might need him to come down. But first you were gonna let us see today, I thought, the actual response he gave us, and now
And
we're
that's
being
why I'm
put off yet
apologizing. I
another
didn't-
month. But what I'm saying is, why didn't you even pick up the phone and say, is it all right to share your response with the complainant? And now we have to wait another month.
No, I think the plan, as Andy spoke, is his intent is to have that this week.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, bear in mind, we had 22,000 people that we've just talked about. We're not exactly getting rich up here. We have spent in
We
the last
understand,
2
but
weeks. I know, I
We filed
understand.
in the summer.
I
so
understand,
July 15th,
and the important point was to get the election behind us. We've done a lot of post-mortem on that. It's got put to bed. I think Andy's comment is reasonable. Yes, he's apologized that we didn't have that available today.
And
And we've been more than patient, I would say also.
I'm not disputing
Yeah.
it.
I will say this. It's only on the calendar because I want it on the calendar, right? And that if I didn't decide that there was anything here for us to do, then we wouldn't be discussing it. I do think that there is something for us to do. I have no intention of taking it away from us or saying, there's nothing to see here. This is not a complaint. No, I want more information. When we reset all this stuff till after the election, is what I intended to make clear, and it's my fault for not communicating it clearly, was that today we were opening the floor up to see if there was anything more from your complaints that we could add to communicate to Mr. Klutz and invite him here for December.
Oh, well, we weren't informed of that we were supposed to come here with anything more to add. We were to come here to get a response, to see the response.
And I'm sorry if I
Yeah,
made that unclear.
it was unclear, but it is what it is.
When we talked in October, here's what I want. Today, we're talking about including the expenses, that's part of your complaint. The shared address, that was another complaint. The city employees being paid, receiving campaign or being reimbursed for campaign work, and then the over expenditures from the donors. Those are the main four that I'm hearing. That's the information that we're going to include to him to ask. And the point was, we would have this discussion today with us, and that for December, we'll have him down here. I don't necessarily want to have a response, and then wait for him. I think we can probably do it all in one meeting, or possibly two if we decide there's more to be done in January. But giving you guys enough information up front, if I'm able to release this to you, have at it. But at the same time, trying to figure out the questions we need to ask. And that's why that was the purpose of today's meeting, is to figure out, okay, again, what do you guys specifically want us to ask as part
But
of
if
this
it's not able to be
complaint?
released prior to
I
him
know
coming,
that,
then
but-
it's a waste of his, well.
I know that, but you guys have still had access to all of the campaign finance paperwork.
I'm
And
sure
that-
he responds.
If it was the complaint, that's what I'm asking. That's what I intended originally. Was there anything else that you guys found that we needed to include? And,
No, we were waiting on you.
okay,
We
And-
may, but we didn't know we could submit supplemental.
that
We were
never
waiting
I thought I
on
done
made
you.
that
because
clear
you
at the
said that
October-
you were gonna contact
Okay.
him.
He may have, but remember, October was when a bunch of us couldn't make it and my audio failed. So
Because
I'm not
so
gonna blame
you
any
all
of
might-
that.
it's not about blaming.
I'm not blaming anything on
No,
your
I'm just
audio.
saying,
if it was unclear, that's what
they
The
may
hope
not
was
have
we
known.
could- You could generate
But I
questions.
find
you
out
could
there's no
generate-
sense in having this man come down in December,
That's
period.
the point.
No point whatsoever, until we
Unless-
see it, we go over it, and maybe we discuss it with the three of you.
I think
Because
there
there
is
may not be a reason to have him come at all, if we're satisfied with what he says. There's no point in that.
Well, but
I think
we
there
need to
are
make
some good questions
Yeah.
that he can come down here and answer.
But you're right. If they're satisfied to your, that's one thing. Ultimately, though, we need to get it on his calendar now.
Yes,
We can
which
always
was 30
change.
days notice for the meeting, which the intention was, after we meet today, we're going to communicate with him to see if he's available to meet with us. If he wants to submit anything else in writing, these are the follow-up questions after today's meeting.
Who
And
is
that-
MDL Strategies? Ask him that.
That's a good question
Who
because
owns
I still
MDL
have, or
Strategy?
consulting or,
Should be.
Yeah.
That's all.
And your hope is that he will respond promptly and that within a week or so, you'll be able to release that information to us
yeah,
So
I
we'll be
think
able to
that would
see
be
it
reasonable.
well in advance of the upcoming meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
And then we can let you know whether we think he needs to be here or not. I mean, he's not coming down as some hotshot election lawyer from Indianapolis to try to intimidate us, because
I don't believe that to be the case.
whatever.
I think he's
Probably why you wanted
he's
it.
been, based on the communication that we received back in August, I think he's more than willing to make himself available if we want to do that by telephonic conference or if we want to ask him to be here in person. I'm not going to be swearing him in. As their attorney, I'm not going to swear anybody in, but there's nothing beyond that. The purpose of the follow-up meeting today was basically, is there anything that you guys wanted to add to this? Realizing that you don't have the response paperwork, but there are still valid questions in the campaign complaint that you guys submitted that they didn't necessarily answer clearly. So that's what we're going to be asking for, the MDL, the overspended expenditures, that kind of stuff. So
If you go back a little further, I didn't know how far we should go back. I would be very curious about why Mike Moore's campaign paid his brother Chuck Moore like 10 grand for headquarters and then another 6 grand for utilities. That seems a little odd to me.
Again, they rented space. I'm sure I can't answer those questions, but it
I
doesn't.
know you can't, but
the
they should have
campaign is
they
still
should have
entitled
they
to-
should have documents. They should have a nice
Receipts,
categorization
yeah.
of receipts.
And we
They're
can ask for
required
all
to
of
do
that.
that by law.
And I'll do that for you.
Okay.
Campaign finance laws need to be,
We don't write those.
I know. they need to be
Politicians write
changed.
campaign
Because
finance.
some of the
Election
little-
board suggests.
Some of the little candidates.
We're not even there yet.
You know.
I mean, the election commission will sit in any of those committee hearings, but I guarantee you, ultimately, those are all written by the politicians that they get enforced
Of course
against.
they are.
I mean, when you specifically asked about the corporate donations, it was made pretty clear to me in my phone conversation with Mr. Kochever that some of these do not even qualify under that. So they're exempt automatically.
Mhm.
There's no expenditure limitation on what they're spending. So
Right.
even though they may call themselves the, corporation of blah, 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 it depends on how they're legally classified. That is the only time that that's going to apply. So it's like the rest of it's out the window. It's just a personal limitation on how much can you afford to spend. And without going too far into it, they return that money anyway, even though they weren't really obligated to. So I'm going to give Mr. Klutz the benefit of the doubt on that he's trying to be as above board and honest, fair dealing as possible with making sure that, there wasn't the appearance of any kind of impropriety. Questions about rentals and stuff like that, they're entitled to do that. They're entitled to buy a car. If they want to open their books to us, I'll ask for it and see what we get back. But yeah, that's what I was mainly asking about today, is those kind of follow-up questions. Can we get any of that kind of stuff? So,
Well, the sad part is that, all candidates are required to turn in these forms several times during the year or during the election season, and no one, quote unquote, audits them. Nobody looks at them. And, I've said when they turn them in, all the clerk's office does is file them in a drawer or file them wherever. They depend on the public.
it is
question and
until
that's-
the state legislature decides that they're going to create funding to do that, it's not going to exist. So
Why have it at
until there's a
all?
department, I don't disagree with you. It
Yeah.
seems to be kind of a circular argument as to, well, then what's the point?
This is a huge, massive money laundering scheme.
It-
Obvious.
Money
We're
laundering.
talking about politics, folks.
I know.
I mean,
That's
there's a
unbelievable.
reason why
No,
people
but-
run for stuff,
I've
because
heard
they're
a
going to
lot.
make money somehow.
That's why the
So-
public doesn't trust
I'm
you.
missing something.
Some
Have I
people are
been-
involved in this for the wrong reasons.
Oh, we
I'm
know
not
that.
saying
You can
everybody,
Google how
but
much I made. I don't get anything
yeah,
out of that.
I mean, all of our salaries are publicly listed. So, I mean,
I think we're just
I don't
tired
disagree
of
with
it,
you that
know?
there is
Yeah,
this
tired of corruption.
that there's a smell to it.
Yeah, there is.
But whether or not it's illegal is a totally different problem for us to solve. And that's what I wanted to follow up with Mr. Klutz, try to get more information, try to see if we can answer these questions.
Well, the court of public opinion tends to sometimes vote quite well
Well,
for.
if you ask the court of public opinion about most
Transparency.
politicians, it isn't very high.
No.
And it doesn't matter which party you're from. A lot of people are just disgusted by the whole process. I'm hoping that
Because the same
you know,
people are involved.
it's not us, because we're sitting here on behalf of you trying to figure out the best we can, doing it one day at a time. There are some politicians, I'm sure, that are above board and they're running their campaigns, but there's a bad apple in every bunch, and sometimes you can't get them out.
There's
And
a lot
yes,
of bad apples.
we've had a very rough time here in this county for the last year, and that's
We're
starting
trying
to
to
move
help root
behind
it
us.
out.
But we'll see how that works going forward.
March will tell.
We shall see.
Mhm.
All right. Does anybody else want to end? Alice, I promise you, I'll try to get something. I'm sorry that wasn't clear. I should be more clear. And I apologize. I know you guys were expecting more information today, is what I was hoping was to take more from your complaint and add to it so that when he answers us in December, we've got more information. And we may get something back, and if he clears it with us, I don't have any problem turning it over to you. So, and if you guys want your email addresses on file with Angela, just make sure she's got them, and that if we get anything, we'll fire it off.
I think she's got the complainant's addresses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Should.
but I mean,
Give it to us.
public's here. I mean, I'll distribute it however you guys wish, if you guys want to be on the distribution list. That sounds like we don't have anything else to cover. And so I'll just make a motion that we recess till December 16th, you say, and we'll do the 4:45.
Andrew, are you gonna move to, you were saying that the three of you were gonna vote on
Yes,
further communication?
I just put forth a motion here that we
Okay.
communicate with Mr. Klutz to make time available at the December 16th meeting at 4:45 for him to make himself available to answer any follow-up questions with the public and us
Second.
regarding the complaint. All in favor?
Aye.
So that'll authorize us to communicate with him and yeah, okay. So 4:45. On December 16th. Is that good for everybody? Okay. All right. Thank you guys again for enthusiastically participating in these meetings. It really means a lot, and I appreciate it.
And happy Thanksgiving.
You
Yes,
too.
if we don't
Yeah.
see you
Good.
before then.
Makes it more exciting, I'm sure.
I did. Motion to recess.
So moved.
All in favor, aye.